I wasn't aware Google was currently facing a series of prosecutions in the US. I mean, I would have thought coming out of Europe. I remember back in the day when Microsoft underwent its antitrust series of court cases, and it seems about similar things. Back in the day, it was about the integration or the degree of integration of Internet Explorer into its system. Now, the fact Microsoft Explorer existed and the integration, relatively tight integration of that with Internet Explorer, it would confuse people. Microsoft spent a lot of money defending themselves to say that no, they were separate entities, and trying to argue that no, it wasn't anti-competitive doing what they were doing. It was. About giving away browser for free, you getting it to use secret APIs, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you can go and have a look at the outcomes and stuff from that. Microsoft at the time was potentially facing being broken up into separate units or separate companies, a bit like AT&T had or Marvell had back in the day. That got broken up into many companies and has actually reconsolidated many of those companies back under the one umbrella again. Bell Labs was a pretty awesome R&D facility back in the day. But Microsoft almost faced being broken up into a company that dealt with, say, business software, so Office, Access, maybe SQL Server, ASP, maybe online services would have been ASP.NET, software development, which could have been the .NET family of languages and development and associated development environments, the OS companies, which would have been just on Windows, and then eventually along came Xbox, so there would have been gaming and stuff as well. Now, Microsoft got through that and stayed in one piece, but the idea of tech companies undergoing allegations of like antitrust type stuff, particularly when they sort of consolidate power in certain regions. Now, so Bell Labs had previously been spun out because of Bell being broken up. So coming out of this case, Google doesn't have to sell its Chrome browser. Sounds just like Microsoft and Explorer, but it's because of them consolidating their position in online search and becoming a de facto monopoly in that area. I mean, if you look at, say, if you look at the engines behind other search interfaces, now Bing was using its own databases and search engine type tech. DuckDuckGo, I believe, was using its own as well, but might actually be using Google data now. They just do stuff to it before it comes back. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But a lot of front ends to online search often are just another way of accessing a Google search. I mean, Yahoo, I think, went from, I'm pretty sure Yahoo now runs a Google engine in the background or runs off Google data. They used to obviously have their own systems and everything else, but then with the collapse of the value of the company, I think they went just to basically trying to be an online news provider, a bit like MSN, that sort of thing. But the other issue that Google attracts is that they can extend that dominance or by reaching into things like Android, so mobile phones, Chrome for web browsing, and the fact that a lot of browsers out there are Chrome based. Plus, you've got the Chromium OS in netbooks and things like that. So there's a lot of Google services out there. There's also a lot of things Google picks up and then dumps and breaks or discards over time. They're a company that's notorious for it. But the sort of thing that Apple gets targeted for with antitrust as well, about the dominance of their iPhone and the walled garden that they maintain for their app store, and how they allow, whether they allow side loading of other apps from outside the app store onto their phones and things like that, even as far as consolidating on charging phone charger types. So USB-C, hey, it's a great tech, but if this had been tried a decade or two back, yeah, the micro USB connections or the Nokia type connections, or even like nobody had a standard connection back then, and a lot of the tech for phone charging was not robust at all. USB-C seems to be pretty decent, but yeah, I mean, so these sort of things come and go and argue. I mean, it's one reason why Epic has had their big argument with Google and Apple about antitrust and the fact that they take 30% fees on transactions in their app stores or transactions on apps on their platforms, and so Epic's arguing that it's anti-competitive and it's largely won, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, antitrust and anti-competitive type cases against these big companies happens fairly often. But Google's in a bit of Google's position with its dominance in web search and the dominant engine for web browsers. Now, the back end for a lot of browsers is either going to be Chrome or WebKit. And I think there's a few smaller types as well. Now, WebKit is an Apple tech that kind of developed out of Conqueror, which was the KDE-based browser, and I'm pretty sure that's the path it came out from. But WebKit is what Safari is based on. So if you've got an iDevice and you've got a browser on your iDevice, it is connecting and is working through WebKit. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether Chrome on an iDevice is using WebKit or is actually using the Chrome engine, but most of the other browsers you get, or most of the other web interfaces you get through an iDevice, are using WebKit. Now, Firefox used to have its own engine as well. I think Firefox is now running Chrome backend. Same with the Brave. I'm pretty sure that's Chrome backend as well. Edge used to be like derivative of Internet Explorer. I'm almost certain that's also running a Chrome backend. Now, it's kind of good that you have these dominant engines in place, because it means that if they adhere to standards, it's good for ensuring a consistent interface and exposure across the net, as long as they're being updated and using modern technologies and things like that. The risk is you have the problems from back in the 90s and early thousands, where Internet Explorer kind of fell behind the curve of modern tech and had non-standard ways of doing things. And so web developers were having to maintain these horrid code bases that had branching logic that supported most browsers and then had to support Internet Explorer in specific ways they were doing things. And yeah, it was good that eventually standards were developed okay to support internet tech. But at the time, these browser monopolies, or the duopoly at the time, was a nightmare for web developers. As it stands now, you've got effectively Chrome type browsers that you're trying to target, and you then need to check against WebKit browsers, because if you want an iPhone to reliably access your site, you've got to make sure it works on WebKit, which drives Safari. Personally, it's always worthwhile having one or two browsers of different back-end engines on your system at any one time. Some are more memory efficient. Some websites are broken in one browser but work in another. Who knows exactly why? Some are better for privacy. Some are more reliable when encountering all sorts of weird ad services and things like that. Google also had their Manifest v3 released, which broke a bunch of services, plus broke the ability to sign in, single sign-in to Google services on older Chrome-based browsers. So there's a lot of apps out there that actually have a Chrome engine built in that can no longer sign on to Google services because they're no longer compliant with the current state of play. And so big changes like that by Google kind of cause whole sections of the industry to fall over and stop working. And so that can be deemed anti-competitive, etc. Plus AI and everything else. So Google has been allowed to continue as it is, or Alphabet, but it's a case that's been running for 5 years. Not surprising, probably going to start again next year. But had it done this, I mean, obviously they'd been found to have done this, but breaking them up the way people were suggesting they could be broken up wasn't going to work. No, not the idea. But yeah, who's to say? I mean, Microsoft sort of dropped WinCE, which was what used to drive the Nokia phones once they bought Nokia. People who were using handheld Windows versions, I mean, that disappeared over time. So it'll be interesting, but I think Google's one of those things. I mean, people thought Microsoft was too big to be broken up or too big to be effectively taken on. But interesting to see coming out of this. And they're going to face another one about the number of systems they own in regards to online advertising. Now, I do remember when Google introduced their AdWords and everything else and went on a buying spree and bought up a lot of online advertising companies that raised eyebrows at the time. But yeah, they own a lot. They're an online advertising company which attracts people in with web search, basically. So yeah, obviously that was covered in a bunch of news, not having to broken up, but it will be stopped from exclusive contracts for various bits and pieces. Will that change much in practice? Probably not. We probably won't see much in the long run.